So everyone, welcome to the third edition of The Bridge. Today we've got three different presenters presenting two different presentations. We have Regina and Christel presenting from Germany. And then we're going to have Liliana Alexandre, who is here in Foz do Iguaçu, presenting. So guys, I'll pass it over to Regina and Christel to begin their presentation for today. Over to you.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so hello to everybody, and thank you very much for the invitation to the Bridge and for the possibility to talk about our article, Learning by Teaching, a Didactic Model to Link Re-Education with Self-Re-Education, introduced by a workshop for developing self-incorruptibility.
Maybe just one thing in the beginning. Could you see our slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. For us is the problem, we could not see you. So maybe if you have a question or a comment or whatever it is, please talk to us, because we will not see a chat or something like that. So it would be good if we could hear you, okay?
Okay, good. So we go on. We are Regina Tschud and me, I'm Christel Wagner. Slide number 2. We are really glad to speak in a more detailed way about our ideas of the article with the topics of student-centered learning and learning by teaching, self-education cycle linked to re-education and self-re-education, personal exemplarism, self-incorruptibility, and the intended workshop pilot. We want to present a project outline regarding the workshop we are developing. And our intention is to create a dialogue with you, receiving feedback and further reflections. And we really appreciate your questions at the end of the presentation. Please, slide number 3. From October 2015 to July 2013, we both started a teacher's training together with some other peers from different countries and nations. It was the first international conscientiologic instructor development course, the CIDC, offered by Reaprendentia. And this was for all of us a very enriching time and as well a demanding period. Out of this training, we got important impulses for re-education, like working on personal self-corruption along the line of personal exemplarism, understanding the process, how to facilitate self-re-education by putting oneself in the shoes of a student, and reflecting how to integrate student-centered learning in future conscientiological courses. Studying the didactical model, learning by teaching, with the goal of integration in conscientiological workshops. During a dinner Regina and I had in May 2013, we talked about this and that.
16, not 13.
16, okay. Oh, thanks. Seems to be longer. And as a kind of resume on the actual state or situation of the CIDC course, what finally resulted in a conversation about our personal current situation. We were discussing about restriction and stagnation in our own evolutionary process. We had been a bit dissatisfied and impatient with our current situation, means not moving fast enough forward concerning our existential process. And this was accompanied by the feeling like to stew in one's juice. With these kind of confessions, we started developing among us an openness, and we had the courage to face and to demonstrate our personal discomfort and unease. So, how we started? The confrontation with personal discomfort led us at the beginning to thoughts about relationships, especially personal ones like in partnerships, to loyalty. How far does loyalty go? Coming to autonomy. What is my personal autonomy? How to preserve autonomy and group? Decision-making process. Are the decisions I am taking really my decisions? Am I the one who decides?
Oh, in what grade is it, or in what kind is it influenced by others, by other factors, right?
Exactly. Right. So finally, touching the topic of self-corruption. We detected similarities within us, and which brought us to further questioning. Really helpful in this context was the fact that we saw at that time within our teachers' training in the CIDC, the film Freedom Writers. It was a film about a female teacher supporting students with problematic social background by developing a higher level of personal exemplarism. This film was in so many aspects and facets inspiring, and as well the appropriate class of the CIDC, explaining very good the idea and the impact of personal exemplarism. Exchanging our experiences, we realized some self-corruptions which turned out as obstacles for personal exemplarism, for authenticity, recycling, and pro-access. As a result, we started to develop a project among us in order to give mutual support in overcoming our self-corruptions and to search for appropriate tools and techniques. Within all the knowledge and ideas and questions we had at that time, we entered into the dynamic process of opening our consciential laboratory. We decided to clarify more topics. Therefore, we need to build up confidence and trust to create an open, energetic field. Which leads us to our project of facing our respectively own self-corruptions. We developed for us the following systematic within our consciential laboratory, and it will start with me, a personal examination, and then move to we, the opening for the consciential laboratory for us by talking to each other, finally entering in group, opening the consciential laboratory in a wider frame, sharing our ideas and results with others. We would like to create a system to spot out personal, groupal self-corruption in a systematic, practicable, and sustainable way. The teacher's training became an opener for reflection and assistance, resulting in writing a book about this process, hopefully. So the next slide, please. Step by step, we have been able to generate a form of a structure how to deal with this really huge project. The motivation of these undertakings or activities have been to foster our recycling, to gain self-knowledge, identify self-corruptions, gain autonomy, recognize unproductive patterns, impede unhealthy repetitions, liberate and work with energies, gain time for productive topics. The next sheet, please. Self-corruption is to steal from ourselves richness, liberty, time, health, space, opportunities, and consciential energies.
Yes, and I think this is a very great quote of Valdo Vera, and it is very condensed and it contains so much content for reflections already that we really took some time to think about it, to reflect on it, and we found it very, very interesting to think about that. And it led us to some general reflections about our education system, because we are for some years already now in conscienciology, but we were asking ourselves, okay, why is it that only now we come really to a deeper level of reflection and to really go also in TICS? And we thought might be also a problem intrinsic for our education system. Because what does our education system nowadays? And we found that this quote here and this caricature really shows that directly. So it says, for a fair selection, everyone has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. Because, okay, if you see it, I think I do not need to explain more about that. And Albert Einstein said, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So it came to thoughts about how could we maybe change that. And we have this idea, okay, if our praxis is really individual, and we think it is, then teaching as well as learning needs to be individual. And we came across student-centered learning. I deal with that for a longer time now. And what this tries is really to put the student into the center of its own learning process. And this will foster self-responsibility for the own learning process and also autonomy. And we consider that this is a really important thing, because if you think about the topic of pre-intermusiology, for example, we think we need really to develop more autonomy for ourselves and self-responsibility. This will really help in this process. Within the student-centered learning, and this is of course not an idea, also student-centered learning is not something that we developed for ourselves. It's something that is well studied nowadays also in universities, in pedagogy. And here we want to introduce this model learning by teaching. Parts of it we also experienced during the teachers training we were talking about already. And of course, students learn by teaching their peers. This is the core of these didactic models. So students need to master the content, of course, in order to teach others about it, but also choosing their own methods and their own didactic approaches. And so learning by teaching should not be confused with tutoring, because the teacher has intense control and gives support all the time. So this model helps to learn more skills, not just the main subject you are teaching, but also, just to mention some, like teamwork, planning ability, reliability, and so forth. Is somebody talking and raising a question? Or was that just...
No, I think someone just didn't have mute on and was making some noise, but...
Okay, okay, no problem.
I don't think there's any question. But if there is, someone speak up, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So this learning by teaching really helps students to reflect on a deeper level. At least this is what we experienced during our teachers training. We could gain a deeper knowledge on the subject, interact with the functional helpers. And this is something students normally do not experience in a traditional setup of a class. Experience the parapedagogical field differently. And what we think is the main difference really to a traditional kind of teaching dynamic is that you teach your own group comma directly. And I want to go deeper into this and explain this a little bit further. And we suggest to take this learning by teaching also to other kind of workshops and topics within conscienciology, really. Let me try to explain the hypothesis that we developed from this. We think that learning by teaching really could accelerate the students' group karmic process because of this different kind of didactic model. You want to add something?
No.
Okay. In student-centered learning, the student could teach his group karma directly. What do I mean by that? The emphasis is here on the personal exemplarism and also applying the clarification task. This is what we normally have in the teaching dynamics. We have the archipeks, we have the teacher working together with the archipeks, passing the information to the student, And on the other hand, we have the group karma that has a really big influence on the students. If you think of new students, for example, first-timers, it really can give students a hard time to be in the first conscientiological classes, right? Whereas in the other dynamic, if we have the learning by teaching, this puts another dynamic into the learning and teaching process. Of course, we also have the equipax and the teacher. They are both there supporting, giving ideas and so on, like we know this. But the students have a different role. He takes the role of the teacher, and he is teaching the group karma directly. So he needs to come to a deeper reflection, what I explained already before. He has to develop this personal exemplarism that we really consider as very, very important in this process. And he really has this clarification task already applying to his group karma, intraphysically and extraphysically. So this attitude of self-researcher, I think this could be really developed here in an easier way, like just in order to consume like we are used to through school, through university. What are we used to there? We learn something and we reproduce it, and then we forget. This is the normal, how can I say, the normal process. But in this dynamic, we think that the learning process is on a much more deeper level than in the traditional dynamic. So we can consider that the self-experimentation is very, very important for self-re-education, and this is what we are aiming here to. Developing these new original ideas, because where are all the Einsteins or all the great new ideas we wanted to bring here, where we want to, really to have our praxis, bring all the knowledge we had already in our intermissive course. Mostly what we do today is reproducing, and we think that this model can really help to change this. Changing attitude towards self-research and executing the praxis. We think that this is what student-centered means, really coming to the axis. We want to show this dynamic really that this is a kind of ongoing process. It starts with a re-education, then students need to study, to reflect, to experiment, and then it starts the self-re-education in this process, learning by teaching. And this is already then again for the group karma, for the peers, a re-education. And this is an ongoing cycle. This is what we want to show here in this graphic.
We usually aren't trained in personal self-research. We yet have tools like the conscientiogram or some other techniques, but what did we develop out of this for us? How many of us took these courses? How regularly do we do these evaluation sheets? The goal of the workshop is identification and overcoming of self-corruption. Each student creates his personal toolbox because, as we said, praxis is individual. The workshop creates a frame for orientation. The students should have basic knowledge in conscientiology, and it is a long-term schedule of 9 months because the topic of self-corruption is not easy to crack. It can be very complex because of different layers of self-corruptions and individual needs like repetitive questioning, correlated recyclings, exchange with peers.
Yes, and sometimes we have these self-corruptions for a long time.
Yeah.
Lives.
Many lives, yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it needs time to create a homeostatic holothursine, to establish a benevolent attitude of self-acceptance, to recognize our potential, and developing a kind of map for or of ourselves called self-knowledge. Encouragement to go into TICS, to do it in our own way. We are what we are, a fish or an ape or whatever. Everyone is a genius. So the main goal of the course is self-re-education. We want to introduce now the frame of the workshop per se. Our modules should be understood as suggestions developed for a pilot workshop. So we have here the modules 1 to 5. It's information maybe provided by the teachers, like important basics or tool for role as a teacher, like aspects of self-corruption, bioenergy, techniques for overcoming self-corruption, self-experimentation and application of the techniques, multidimensional aspects, preparation for presentation of self-research.
Right. And then what Christel was talking about means the basics, so to say, and then we have the models that we think could or should be created by the students. And we really want to put the students. Sorry?
Você fazer pela celular?
No computador. Ué, cadê?
Sorry, guys, I can't understand you. Okay, maybe I just go ahead and we can clarify that later. Okay.
Yeah, I think if you can type any question you have into the chat window, and then we can cover the questions all together at one stage once the presentation is finished.
Yeah. Okay. Would be good. Okay. Okay, so we want to try to put really the student into the center of the workshop. So what we suggest is that we have several approaches related to the topic of self-corruption. So what we suggest is to look at this from different angles. For example, holosoma, seriality, proaxis, and so on and so forth, like you see it here. But these are only to be understood as suggestions, because the student should be free to research and to present his own topic, his own research. Because as we explained before, we think this is really important. This is just to give an idea what these modules might be about, but we think it is important that this has a flexibility really to see what is needed on the student side.
Yeah, and we thought as well about meta-reflections, maybe some individuals from time to time and some in group, yeah.
Yes. So who could take advantage from this workshop? We think that this should be students with profound knowledge in conscienciology. We think it could not be newcomers, of course. Should be used to the basic concept and all of that. We think recyclers as well as inverters could take advantage from this, because it's dealing also with inner consensual recycling, right? And we think this could be also something for teachers. And we also think that if there are only teachers in the group, we could also shorten the time for the basic modules, because there, of course, we do not need to elaborate about bioenergies and all the stuff that we showed in the basic modules.
The workshop should not be a therapy.
It should also not be a receipt for self-corruptions in general.
No providing simple solutions.
Not be teacher-centered.
Not theoretical.
Or making students being afraid of what they are, whatever it might be, a fish or an ape.
Okay, so thank you for your patience, and
yes.
We really would love to hear your ideas and questions, feedbacks, insights.
Hey guys, thank you very much for the presentation. It's really interesting. There's heaps of different ideas and stuff which I have some questions, but I'd like to hear other people's questions first of all. So any of you out there, who has any questions for Christel and Regina?
Hello, Christel and Regina.
Hi.
I do have some questions, and congratulations for the great presentation and for the idea of the workshop. And regarding the student-centered learning and the relation with geniality, do you think it's possible to help students to find out their specialties? I mean, their specific skills to execute their existential program? And if so, how teachers can better help students to achieve that, in your opinion?
Mm-hmm. We think that this would be a great opportunity to find this speciality. Might be one, might be more than one, that might be interrelated, for example. And I have the idea that, of course, we have a lot of techniques in conscientiology. There are, not to say tons of techniques, but what we want to try, because this is our own experience, you have techniques here, there, and there, but just to have a kind of potpourri in order to teach people, okay, how can I pick the right one that is fitting for me? So the idea is in the basic modules to present these techniques and to think about together with the students, okay, which kind of technique might help for which kind of self-corruption, and what works for me must not work for you, or might not work for you. And so this is the idea, to do this in a systematical way, because we found out for us, okay, we have a lot of techniques there, but what is missing, was missing for us is that we have an idea, how could we put this in a systematical frame? So our idea was to present the techniques first, and then to think on the way to these modules that students elaborate for themselves, in order to have an idea, okay, this technique might work for me because it's related to this kind of self-corruption. And then to find out, okay, let me apply this technique for a while and see how it works, and so on. And maybe to get a feedback also from the peers and from the teachers in order to say, okay, no, it was not too bad, but it didn't work quite well. Maybe I should adapt it, or whatever it might be. Or maybe the student comes up with his own technique, for example, or something in that way.
Yeah. So. And I think one of the most important things, as well as we said before, is the sustainability of that, of using the techniques, because I think all of us, as Regina said before, we know a huge amount of techniques, but honestly, who really takes one of these techniques and use it for some weeks or for a longer time regularly? And I think to get through these different layers of self-corruption, it is really, really helpful, and it is needed to be sustainable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to do this, yeah, in a really practicable way.
Yeah, and we want to also elaborate the analysis of this self-corruption. For me, it works pretty well, since I learned more and reflected more on the approach of holosoma, really to see, okay, where is it rooted, so to say, and where can I really try to go to the root, and which kind of technique might I use for this? This is something that helped me, because therefore I got a better clue where to set the hook. I don't know how to express better. In order to start dealing with the self-corruption. And sometimes you, on the way, you see, no, okay, I came a bit deeper, but that's not the real root. There's another layer I need to confront or to tackle. And so maybe in that point, I need to change the technique or find another solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your answer. And congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? what do you think about this kind of model? Do you think this could work? Okay, we experienced in the teachers training, and several other people, of course, did this teachers training as well as a student or as a educator. So do you think this would be also transferable in a sense to other topics, and also really letting students choose, because we think that might be the step further related or in regard to our teachers training, because there we had topics, we needed to elaborate them. But our idea is the step further maybe would be that really people choose their own topic. And we think normally you have a good clue in which direction your self-corruption is, at least.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. I want to congratulate you. This is a really interesting times and interesting proposal. And I just wanted to ask one or two things. One of the things is, would this work, this workshop, more a little bit like coaching? You will try to find together with the students their needs, or try to help them on the way where they should go and ask and collect information for identification of their self-corruptions and how to deal with it, which techniques to use, present them a panoply of techniques or something like that. That is one of the questions. And the other thing that I was going to say is that yes, all our recycling, our proaxis is our own proaxis, but then there is that part, and there's the other part, which is the group proaxis. Okay, we have, then we are in a group, and it's all put together by the evolutiologists. We don't know exactly how it works, but bit by bit we find out, I think. Okay, just that. So I would like to hear about you. Is this some kind of approach that has to do with certain psychological new approaches, new techniques, a sort of a coaching? How does it work? A little bit more. I want to hear a little bit more, because I'm really very curious. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
yes. Okay, so the idea is to have this model learning by teaching, because we found for ourselves it's a very, very powerful tool in order to come more to the core, so to say. And so from my point of view, it should not be a coaching. And I think it could it could support the students by coming closer to their self-confrontation, because that's what it is, right? If we deal with self-corruption, it's about self-confrontation. Okay, what we of course could not do, something like kind of therapy. We are not psychologists or something. This is not what it should be. It's really to foster ourselves and of course the students, in order to go more in this attitude of self-research, really, because this is what we think is lacking, because we are used to that. Our education system works like this. We consume the knowledge and we do something with it, but more on a superficial way. And this is something that tries to go deeper with the people. We think that this is a process and has nothing to do with coaching, because I could not tell you, this is your self-corruption, right? This is not our goal. Everyone has to find out. Of course, there will be this kind of meta-reflection, but in order to clarify for the people where is maybe help needed, where could be something adapted, and where is the process as a whole. But we could not offer any kind of therapy or something like that.
Yeah. And I think it is, as we said before, it is really important to understand that we all should go in our own responsibility for our own life, for our own self-corruptions. And if you stuck in your own juice, as said before, it is much harder to go through these layers. I think all of us have this experience. But if you are able, as we explained, to share it with someone, you have a kind of trust and you feel good, it is easier. And at the next step, you develop maybe the willingness to hear things you normally don't like to hear, and you create this openness we have been talking about to hear, okay, there is a spot in myself which triggers me a bit, but maybe she's right in what she's telling me, and maybe I can have a look with that. That's the idea, to do this workshop. And as the workshop's name said, perceive, it's a process of working as well with us together in a group.
And we consider the role of the teacher more like a facilitator, because we think that this autonomy is becoming more and more important for us. So it should not be a coaching, it should not be a therapy from my point of view. First of all, we lack this know-how, and we also think that this is important really to take your own responsibility. No one there that's telling you, you should do this, you should apply this technique, but giving this frame so that people can have a secure frame to try it out and ask others for help. But it's how can I say, eye-to-eye level, right? This is what we want to create with this. And you were raising the topic of group praxis. I think you're totally right, but it's not a but. I think if we know ourselves better, and if we find out and really apply our personal praxis, we fit, or we can, how can I say, we can take the group praxis to another level, and if everyone in the group can really come to his praxis really, and does not waste time with, I don't know, and I stay on the surface, I think then group praxis works even better from my point of view.
Just want to thank you. Yes, thank you for that.
Thank you for your question.
Thanks.
Hello, I have another question. Thank you first for the presentation. I found it was very didactic, very interesting. When you showed with the slides in one slide how the group karma process then of the student is being worked on directly through the students. This was very interesting. So this shift, I think, is this major, the mother thought scene of technique. My question is about the security in terms of the group. When you open the workshop and you say, okay, all people who know something about conscientiology, they have a deep, but you don't know the people before. And so every group has a group dynamic, so we know that. So even if we maybe give some guidelines, okay, we should not, speak about these things that we speak here outside and so on. But how did you think of preparing this security of the private space of this group, and that things are not going, along a way which we don't want as a teacher now,
Yes. I think this is really something that we need to elaborate very carefully. As we said, this is a pilot. We don't have something ready yet to start tomorrow. And therefore, we think that this is very, very helpful for us to get this feedback and maybe to see things we maybe did not think about too much until now. Yes, to have these guidelines, and we found for ourselves it's very important to have this homeostatic holothought in order to open up, in order to not make a mess. So this is very important, and I think there will be some kind of guidelines really And of course, the people really must be serious that they want to work on that. And there must be also kind of commitment from the people really to work on this, and also to respect the other peers and everyone who's part of that workshop. Of course, these are very, very important things that will be crucial for creating this Holothosene. Yeah, this is important.
So we thought to have these 5 basic modules provided by the teacher. This was a little bit the idea behind this as well, to create these confidence and this kind of trust between the people. So you get knowledge from each other, and I think you will build up this homeostatic Holothosene Regina was just talking about.
Yes, and we also put in here, for example, bioenergies, because we think this is also an important topic, that people really are working with their energies during the process, that this is one major thing also in these basic modules as well. And of course, cosmoethics, to talk about that already in the basic model would be very important from our point of view.
Like a small cosmoethical group codex or something like that, like a combination of things.
Where everyone really commits to these standard of cosmoethics.
Yes. Thank you, Christel, Regina.
Hey guys, so it's now time for the second presentation from Liliana, but just to remind everyone that after Liliana's presentation and the debate related to that, we do have another half an hour of open debate about anything from either of the presentations. So keep your questions, and we'll go ahead after Liliana has presented her talk, which will begin about now, I think. Liliana, over to you.
Thank you.
Oh, Thais, sorry, Liliana. Thais has jumped in here. Let's see what she has to say.
Yes, just a minute. I just wanted to ask something, if it's allowed, because I entered late, and I just wanted, if it's possible, for them to make a resume, 2 minutes of resume of their presentation, just for me to let know what was about.
Thais, maybe.
Yeah, okay. Regina, is that possible?
Maybe it would be good if we can do this later. Would this help, Thais? Maybe.
Yeah, I had the same thought.
Problem.
Good idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Could you give us the slide while, because I can read it. Okay.
Okay,
so,
guys.
Liliana.
Okay.
Now it's all yours.
All right. So my presentation is not as beautiful and as well prepared as I've just seen. Okay, hers. I've just written a text, and probably I'll just read a lot about it. But feel free with any questions, and we'll discuss whichever things you don't find, you don't agree with, or you don't find clear enough. Okay. So the first point on my presentation is just what is pangraphy, because it is a subject that still many people question. But what is that? Because that's something that mainly only Valdo Vieira talked about. So as a definition, and I took it from one of the entries of the encyclopedia, according to Vieira, pangraphy is the advanced consciential register made using one's multidimensional perceptual experience of different parapsychic phenomena that may occur simultaneously, such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, psychometry, telepathy, precognition, retrocognition, and others. So as a synonym, we have that pangraphy would be sort of parapsychic multimodal writing, increased psychography, for handwriting, so like writing together with a helper. Claritastic graphic materialization, parapsychic thosinic signature, or conjoint claritask. And as an antonymy, what is it? What pangraphy is not is longhand or common writing. It's not simple psychography. It's not agraphia, so someone that doesn't write. It's not telepathic copying, and it's not graphic intrusion. Another thing that is important about pangraphy is what it tries to achieve, if you want. We can synthesize this is the advanced leading edge technique for producing or for achieving a trivocabular megathosine. So pangraphy generates verpons. The idea is to develop with it, further develop conscientiology. I mean, that's the objective, so to speak, the main objective. So there are many entries already in the encyclopedia about pangraphy. And as I once spoke with Dr. Vieira, and I told him this was my research theme, he answered, well, you know, only I have written about that, so you'll have to read all I've written. And I said, oh, yes, I already done that. And yes, the idea is try to put this more into practice and see how I can do about it. So let's see how it goes. So and with this, I come to the second point of the presentation. What is the difference between pangraphy and mental-somatic parapsychism? So it's not a huge difference. They're kind of synonyms. But the emphasis is the intellectual interdimensional fields that you generate when you are writing together with a helper, and the interdimensional fields that are accessed when you are in this process and you are producing a text within a certain context, if you will. So a bit of history. So until fairly recently, I thought, and probably everyone thought, that pangraphy was just something, you know, a type of parapsychism that only Dr. Vieira had. And because we still have, many of us, we still have a very dualistic approach to things, it was a bit either you have it or you don't have it. So Dr. Vieira has it, and if you're not so sure, then you don't have it. But I came to view things, this is not like that. As everything else in life, as everything else in a consciential evolution, it is about evolution. So pangraphy is everything else is a process. So obviously you were not born fully equipped with everything already developed. It's something that everyone who wants to pursue can achieve. You can work towards it. So, and I was thinking some 5 years ago, there was this I see this conscientiocentric institution that was created that is more dedicated to forming multidimensional researchers. And when I came into conscientiology, right from the start, when I was asked, what do you want to do? And I said, what I want to do is to research and to write. And they said, okay, yeah, fine, but first you have to do, you have to be a volunteer. Okay, let's do volunteering work then. Whatever it's needed, we'll do it. And then later on, a couple of years later, I was asked, okay, so if you want to research, you have to be a teacher. Okay, I'll prepare myself and be a teacher then. So I've done that as well. So in the end, after many years, I've been in conscientiology for 20 years now. In the end, I was thinking, okay, and where is the research coming in? Obviously, gradually, as a teacher, and also in the process that you guys were discussing, you learn a lot as you teach. This is fundamental. This is fantastic. This is one of the most fantastic things about what we are doing in conscientiology. So, but all along the process, you are investigating yourself, you are gaining gradual self-awareness, you are doing recycling here and there. But I come from the international, so I've worked as a teacher. I mean, I've done work in Lisbon, also in London, and most of the time we are very much focused on giving classes, if not every day, at least every weekend. And we've been mostly concerned with generating mass awareness by transmitting that information to the students. And in that process, we kind of forget about ourselves. You know, there was a lot more of things that I wanted to do that I was not doing. And when this process of the international, for me, it came to a point that I said, okay, I've done here all that I needed to do, that I could do. And I was a volunteer at the time with the ISC. I've been with the IPC, with the ISC, and then I thought when the ISC split from Unicin, which I think it's a very sad thing, because we are all the same group, and you know, sooner or later we'll have to sort out our differences. But when there was this split, I understood that my work in Europe had ended, and I wanted to know what was the next step. And for that, I came to Brazil, and I came to CIEC. And I always had in the back of my mind this idea that if once I would come here, I would never leave. It's kind of, so I hadn't come before. It's my first time. And in 2 days, I've got enough information intraphysically and extraphysically that the next step was to move here and work here. So fine, let's do that. So I went back to London, I got everything packed, and in 2 months I was back to live here. So now I'm living here I've been living here for two years now. So gradually, finally, I was missing, I say, well, I need an upgrade. So I was missing a number of courses because conscientiology here in the CIEC evolved a lot. There are all these lot of conscientiological institutions developing fantastic courses, fantastic tools, and new techniques. And all this is very, very important, I think, in our process, especially when you're in invasiveness. You see, okay, they are touching all buttons now. So it's very, very interesting. Obviously, you have to find a bit your way when you come. So I tried to figure out that. But right at the start, I had this information also kind of extra-physically. I did an complementarium, and I've done a dynamic that was very interesting. The epicenter in this dynamic asked me, okay, so what is your specialty from the intermissive course? I said, wow, do we have a specialty from the intermissive course? I have never had the time to think about it. Okay, so that was, wow. You say, and I didn't know. I don't know. I really don't know. And then the epicenter asked, okay, so what is your theme of research? And I said, oh, my theme of research is, well, it's creativity and parapsychism and how one thing links with the other. I said, okay, go home and do your homework, go and read all the specialties in conscientiology, and then you'll know. Oh, okay. Then I was a bit embarrassed, but okay. So with that, right next to it, I had another information coming from the extraphysicals that, okay, if you want to be a researcher, go and do the course. So I did do this, I see that that is dedicated to research, and I did the first course, and it became very clear then what the theme of research is and what my specialty from the intensive course is. So it is related with communication, the specialty, and the theme is then pangraphy, which also obviously has to do with communication. So it's a multidimensional communication, really, and that, as you develop it, it's a two-way thing. Creativity takes to pangraphy, and pangraphy takes to creativity. It's kind of, it goes all around. But okay, so now one of the things that I knew was very important was also to establish, to establish a little bit my holobiography, because if you understand where you come from and your past, you understand better your present, so you can do a better self-relay where it's possible, or self-recycling, so that you can prepare your future. In this case, my future, I already think of my next soma and my next extra-physical life, and what I intend or what I am, what I can do, okay? Here still in the intraphysical and then in the extra-physical. So that takes me, that is why I'm doing this research, okay? So again, my argument is then that pangraphy is a process, right? And in this complementarian that I did, I said that to the epicenter, and they said, okay, they started, maybe you're right. So now I know that this epicenter, together with another one, because there's also a dynamic about pangraphy going on now in the CAEC. These two epicenters, they've come up with a new course that, for the time being, there's only been a pilot, and the pilot has just been presented to the Encyclosapiens team. But this course will be also available, hopefully soon, to other researchers that want to move on in this area. So you have dynamic, you have an IC that dedicates to it, you have another course coming up. So if anyone is interested in this area, soon there will be more information. So that brings me to the third point, why exactly develop a little bit more, why is pangraphy my theme of research? In this regard, what happens is that I've had many manifestations since I was a kid, since I was a child, and growing up and recovering my cons, my unities of lucidity up to the age of 25 years old, that I had a lot of manifestations that I could not fully understand, and how they were interconnected. So then the moment I did that course with the Reconsciencia in the holocycle, with the epicenters there, I mean, with the extraphysical team, it became very clear how things were connected. So it was like, okay, these pieces of the puzzle, I couldn't put it together yet, but now I understand how one thing leads to the other, and how all of this is a process of developing pangraphy. So fantastic. So let's move on. Going deeper into the subject and then trying to put this in practice. So I had different things happening, as I was saying, and some of the things, they were in writing, because I started writing when I was 13 years old, but other things were not even in writing, because I used to love to sketch and paint and do drawings and that stuff. And I knew that many of the times I was using my hand, but it wasn't me doing it. And once I even produced, together with my brother, I was teaching him how to draw, and he was just 5 years old or something like that. And together we draw something that actually was from a very famous painter, and I had never seen that painting before. So there are lots of manifestations that happen to you that I was saying, okay, but I had this feeling that I was working with someone. I didn't know who that someone was, but I knew that was already something of working as a team with the extra-physical, whatever that was. So there are many other little anecdotes about that, but I'm not going to waste your time with it. So what is the plan, if you will? I wish to try to write about, there was a colleague, one other thing. There was this group of 5 or 6 people here in the CAEC that were doing some meetings just to develop pangraphy. I once was invited and I went to one of these sessions, and it was very, very interesting, but most of the texts produced, I didn't feel that they were exactly pangraphy. They were more like the automatic writing, because they were not exactly about conscientiology. And one of my experiences with pangraphy is that my classes and the lectures that I prepared, even when I was in Lisbon, giving classes, my classes and my lectures, they were prepared together with a helper. And one day I even remember the helper said, okay, let's do it, but if you don't put your hands on the keyboard, it's not going to happen. Sort of, let's sit down and do it. Okay, and then you put the hands, and it's like opening the tap. Everything starts pouring out and you start moving and producing your texts. So in this case, these texts were not exactly conscientiology. So I thought, okay, maybe this is not for me, or at least it's not for me right now. But yes, so I do want to try to, and the idea is to produce at least, to produce a book. And the idea is to try to speak about the process, and maybe by speaking about the process and how it happened to me, maybe other people will understand that it is a process, and maybe this will help other people go through the process of developing these capacities, the parapsychism in a more mental somatic way, if you will. So I intend to run a parallel research on my holobiography and try to understand the process better, so to better learn how to describe it. And obviously, books take a few years to write, probably, but mine has started 10 years ago, so it's about time to start moving on in a faster pace to see if I can finish it. So what are the basic items of pangraphy, if you will? What do you need to pay attention when trying to develop your pangraphic capacity, if you will? So if this is something that is about writing, you need to write. That's the first thing. Right? All of these needs to be accompanied, all your research needs to be accompanied by writing, because writing helps you to understand your thoughts better, helps you to connect with the helpers, helps you to clarify yourself before you can clarify others, and helps you to fixate intraphysically the ideas so that others can profit from that as well. Let us remember that Dr. Vieira wrote all he wrote based on the experience of multidimensional, multi-existential, anthozenic reality. So developing and using pangraphy. So we can, I think we can but follow his footsteps, so to a certain extent, right? So each one will arrive at where the person needs to arrive. But we have an original and unique way to get there, which is this capacity of developing further our parapsychism and being able to further develop conscientiology itself, if we will do the work, I suppose. So if we examine our experiences, our insights, our hints, our holobiography, our innate ideas that we inherited from ourselves, if we examine all the things that relate to our intermissive period, all the lessons that we've learned from there, if you examine what is your specialty from the intermissive course, if you examine what is your theme of research or themes of research that could be related to that, I think that we have enough ammunition to move on and do something else. So what we need to sort of consolidate in the process is cosmoethics, orthotheosanity, and that recycling obviously is very important for that. Keeping track of your personal evolutionary code, examination of your personal evolutionary record, mapping your personal energetic signals, identifying and gradually eliminating your theosinic blockages, improving your capacity to do sympathetic assimilations and sympathetic de-assimilations. Obviously, put your penta in practice, or if you're not doing it, achieve the porticity as quickly as you can. And that I always had the feeling that if we really want to, we can achieve that in this lifetime. And then keep in check and further develop all parapsychic disciplines, but give further importance to clairvoyance, clairaudience, if you will, telepathy, precognition, recognition. This will help you find out faster who you are and what you can do. So also, you can check your leisure interests and why you need each of them, so that this will give you also some clues on what you need to recycle, but also what you need, what you can use with yourself, kind of as a therapy to recycle and bring about the best in you, if you want. You know, bring more orthotheosanity into your life. And finally, I had the item here of unblock all prejudice. So I would just read you just 2 little paragraphs. Remember that when you move with the universe moves with you. You gain more lucidity, connect more with the thematic extraphysical teams, have more experience, more reflection, more understanding, better comprehension of everything multidimensionally. Thus, you can move towards your objectives. Sometimes you will need to stop so you can hear. Sometimes you will need to hear so you can reflect. See why you still have the insecurities you have and what you can do about them. Always give the benefit of the doubt. All consciousness can change, learn, and recycle because they just do. It is all a matter of time. And even when you think that you are running out of time, which sometimes I have the feeling, understand that all is relative because time expands or it shrinks depending on what you do with it. And that is the final bit of my presentation. So I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Liliana, thanks very much for the talk. Obviously an interesting theme. Who has any questions I'd like to ask Liliana? Feel free.
I'd like to ask a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Go ahead.
Hi, Liliana. I really
Hi.
liked your presentation, and I think this topic is awesome. It's very good to study, and it's important as well. And when I'm thinking about developing this subject, I don't know how to develop, because the parapsychism is easy. Like we know that we need to develop in every area, in everything, but I don't know how to fit, for example, the psychometry in this process, you know. And
Okay.
so the only subject that is a little bit blurry for me is the psychometry. I think that I would like to understand how would I fit that into the whole process.
Right. So in my opinion, so as everything else, it's all about experience. The only way that we can develop further and move on and evolve, it's by experience, right? So if you do more, I don't know how much psychometry you have already developed, but okay, please don't forget to write about it. Okay, this is an important subject, but because this can help others to develop it as well. So as you go and you move on, developing more of that, you will be able to incorporate with everything else, because it's parapsychism is a panoply of many different things, right? And sometimes we have more, some of them more developed already because we've been developing them from many lives, and others are not yet, you know, not yet there, so to speak. But gradually, if we try to put all of this in practice, try to use techniques, and also there's this thing, it's not, when you're ready, things happen. So if you get a more close relationship, and a closer relationship with the helpers, and you really want to develop something, this will happen. They will help you. You will have the experiences. And gradually, you will understand how that links with everything else. Okay? It's all a process. It's all about experience. So let's experiment and let's write about it.
It makes sense. It makes sense, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Who else has a question for Liliana?
I have a question, and my question is similar to the Carol's one. Please, Liliana, if you could clarify it a little more. In your opinion, how can we distinguish psychography from pangraphy? And for example, if we start doing psychography, how do we know when pangraphy starts?
Okay, so the thing is, you do have to start with automatic writing, okay? This is important. So you need to develop empathy, you need to develop that openness, a certain passivity, as Valdo used to say, a certain passivity with the extra-physical, so that you can actually move together, okay? And initially, you do have to develop the capacity of automatic writing, okay? But gradually, if you move on in the direction of pangraphy, you get the notion that what you produce, the work you produce, what you write is not just yours. And if it's about conscientiology, who else is there? Okay, so it becomes very clear. You know that you are using your brain. You're still you have some ideas there. Sometimes they are not very, let's put it this way, they are not maybe very clear to you. And in this joint work with the helper, the helper helps you clarify them even to yourself as you write and then you pour it. For instance, when I wrote these 4 pages, the last 2 pages were together. Sort of, I started on my own and then the helper joined, and the last bit and even the list of the things that you need to develop was made together. Because I was saying, okay, what do we need to develop? And okay, this, that, and the last 2 paragraphs that I read to you, they were dictated. So, okay, it's all a process. One thing is certain, you need to be proactive because you want to, okay? You are active because you want to develop this, but you need to learn how to be passive as well. And how do you know it's not, I've been asked before, how do you know it's not an intruder? It's because of the results of the work. First, I feel that's why you need to develop also it's very important that you develop well your parapsychic signals, all that, because then you will know who is approaching, because you have specific signals when it's a helper or when it's not. And then when you get together and the helper, imagine that comes a point that this helper is used to work with you. So it's even more clear because it's that consciousness that is there that came, okay, let's do that, let's do the work, okay? So, and the work that you produce, it's clear to you, and that's what happened to me many times. But if I, for instance, file this away and I come back to it a few months later and said, oh, did I write this? Was it me? Really? Was I that good on these ideas? No, it was teamwork. And most of the time, that's my experience. It is teamwork when the work produced is of high quality. Okay? When things are not so clear, not so, or there's a tendency there that leans towards some weak trait that I'm still working with, then you notice, okay, this is me, only me. Okay, we need to get better at that. Okay, so the product of the work tells you when it's teamwork, most of all, but also your parapsychic signals also give you that information. Who is together with you, and when? Okay, so that's it. I hope you. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I got it. Thank you.
I have a question.
Does anyone else
Hello,
have any
everybody.
question? Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Hi, Ulysses.
Very nice presentation, Liliana.
Thank you very much.
I have a question in the same way Paulo did. Did you have any experience when somebody tells you that he could have any kind of pangraphy, and you should consider that it was not pangraphy? So the question is about the criteria. I'd like just to go on, moving on the same way that you were talking with Paulo. But of course, pangraphy is a very complex phenomenon, and we are always thinking about if it's happening or not. So I'd like to ask you if you have any experience when other people tells you about it, and you consider that it is not. And so, what could you tell about it?
Okay. So for me, when I don't ask myself if it's happening or not, because for me it has become very clear. Because I've had many experiences. I was a kid since at least I was 13 years old or something like that. So it's so for me, I no longer ask myself that question. I only ask who is together with me sometimes. But as I was saying, the results of the work tells me more than anything else of who was together with me. When I see something written by other person, I don't know, sometimes it's what I try to do is, for instance, I have been working with translations for many years. So I was the first translator of the Journal of Conscienciology, translator and reviser. So I've worked with that at least for 14 years in a row. But what I try to do when other people produce their text is I try to do an auric coupling with the writer and with the helper of the writer and with my helper. And I try to perceive what it is that needs to be, for instance, that needs to be translated, or what it is that was in their mind when they were describing this, they were writing this. So when I was, and I referred before that I went into a meeting and the texts that were produced were more, in my opinion, it's only my opinion, all we have is opinion, okay? But in my opinion, they were not so much pangraphy. It's because the texts after that, we read all the texts in between us, and all those texts, none of them was about, only mine was about conscienciology. Everything else was, and people could even, some people could identify who were the helper that was with them, or their guide, or something like that. And the text didn't have anything to do with the conscienciology. So what? That was a bit strange for me, okay? But I just went to a meeting, so I decided, okay, maybe this is not for me now, but you know, this, okay. I prefer to do it on my own with my extra-physical guy. That's just that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, thank
Liliana.
you. Thank you.
Yes.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah. Yes, of course, Thais.
Yeah. Because I was thinking, if you consider this experience that you had all along of your life, automatic writing or parapsychism, with pangraphy, what do you consider?
Right. So as I was saying, it is a process. So initially, some of the things were not even in writing, but some was, because I started writing when I was 13, and I was always a very reflexive person, and I had ideas from the intimacy, of course, and innate ideas very, very soon, very early in my life. So when I was writing about these things, I always felt, so there was parapsychism there, but in my family, nobody else talked about parapsychism. Nobody else talked about any of these things. Only my mom sometimes asked me things, and I would give her answers that she was, where do you get these ideas, these strange ideas? Where do you get this from? And so I just can't explain, but that's the way it is for me. If you want to accept it, fine. If you don't, we are friends. No ways. But there was, parapsychism was there, but I didn't call it by that name, okay? So there were a number of things that I knew I was not doing alone. So if I'm not doing alone, but I used to ask myself lots of questions, like, for instance, not all of these is dreams that I have every night.
And a few thank yous and stuff from people around the place. Lovely to see everyone from around the world.
I would like to thank
last comments, Lily, go ahead.
Okay, I would like to thank also this project, the project The Bridge, which I think is really, really very important, because as you say, we all surely need to exchange ideas, exchange views, pose our questions, and grow up together, really. So every research is important.
Yeah, and so
to share all that stuff with you and to get your ideas. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really great project, Paula. Really good initiative, guys. So, Paula, do you have anything to say, to add? Any last words there? Not so much,
Jeff.
Paula. There we go.
Yeah, I just would like to mention, I really enjoyed the way you started the energy work, the movements and the sequence you proposed, and I felt very good energy, very de-assimilated. Very good, man. And we'd like to thank you all for joining. And if you have any suggestions to improve this program, please let us know. Thank you all.
That's it. Great, guys.
Thank you,
Until
Paul.
next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All the best, everyone. Thanks. Bye.